Vertigo's Author Spotlight, and today we're joined by Kassidy Caroline. Now, this is a place where we shine a light on some amazing stories and the masterminds behind them. So we're happy to have Kassidy here. So we're going to welcome you. So welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
We're so glad you're here. So we're going to kick this off with a few questions. So we're going to cover your background and career. So I've already got 3, so don't worry. So you started your career writing and editing for a local paper. How does that experience shape your journey towards writing your debut novel?
So yeah, I got a lot of experience while I was writing and editing for that paper. I got a lot of experience just writing small articles and being able to hone my writing skills and also learn different grammar techniques through the AP style book, which is what journalists use to write articles. And then I also got to study in a journalism class while I was working on that newspaper. And so I think it was just a really great way for me to learn from other people that I was working with, as well as expand on my creativity, because I got to choose what articles I was writing about. You know, I wasn't given specific things to write about. I got to go out and find my stories. And so it tapped into my creativity as well.
That's like amazing to hear. So what ultimately drove you to make the leap from journalism to writing a young adult novel? Because obviously from the outside, it might look like, okay, she was already writing and she already had all this experience and she was like getting her writing legs under her. But actually, when you're one of the person like doing it, like you were, you don't really, it's not like that. You don't see it as it's like a natural leap. So how did you find that?
Well, for me, so I started writing this book when I was the second half of my senior year of high school, and I really started writing it for fun. It was just kind of like a passion project for me. And then when I got into college, which is when I started working for the newspaper, I really wanted to develop my writing skills, and I really wanted to get into the publishing world, which is, you know, what that newspaper kind of allowed for me to do. And, you know, that was when I started thinking I can actually make this passion project, you know, kind of a business. I can make it a real thing. I can make it a professional thing. And so that's kind of when it started becoming more of that, was when I started working on the newspaper and, you know, going to college for writing and doing that and being able to explore my options more.
Yeah. So can you share like some of the biggest challenges you faced while transitioning from editing and journalism to a novel writing?
Well, some of my biggest challenges, it's a lot more to edit for sure. And sitting down, and the editing styles are different.
Yeah.
I feel like when you're editing a journalist piece, it's a lot more professional in terms of like the writing and the language that you use. Whereas with a book, you have a lot more creative freedoms. You, especially where you use commas. That was one thing. I had an editor that I worked with, like, because I did self edits, of course, but I also had an editor who looked it over a couple times.
Yeah.
And, you know, something that I talked a lot with her was that with writing a book, you have a lot of creative freedoms where you want to put commas, because it's about how the author wants you to read that sentence and less about where the comma actually needs to go.
Because what I see, like you're saying, is like that's where like your voice comes out naturally as like an author, whereas like it's like a lot more strict, even in just like names. You mentioned like commas, but like names or like places, and like, you know, when you like make up like a different land or anything like that, if like you're writing fantasy and stuff like that. So it's like the spellings and all of that is just like all goes out the window.
Exactly. Exactly.
So we're gonna move forward to your writing journey and some of your inspirations. So
Okay.
what inspired The Shadow We Hide? Was there a specific idea, event, or person that sparked the story?
So honestly, a couple different things sparked this story. I'd say it was a combination of different things. One of the biggest things was that I had just finished reading this great novel called um, Diary of an Oxygen Thief by an anonymous writer. And it had this very anti hero main character. And I really liked the idea of an anti hero main character, or at the very least, a character who has to struggle a lot and isn't perfect from the get go, or at least has a lot of flaws.
Mhm.
Like, and isn't somebody who is completely likable, or has flaws that make them easily likable as a character.
Yeah.
And so on top of that, that idea was kind of swirling around in my brain for a couple of weeks. And then one day it had blizzard. I live in the Midwest, and so we have crazy weather.
Yeah.
And it blizzard, and I was taking care of a friend's dogs, and I was walking home from taking care of them, and my feet were crunching on the ice as I was walking across the street, and I just thought to myself, it would be nice to be anywhere but here. Like days like this, it would be nice to be anywhere but here.
Hmm.
And I was like, that idea, that sentence just kind of formulated, and I was like, this is something. And I went home and immediately started writing.
It's like phenomenal to like hear, because I can just say like you don't choose when inspiration hits you, and like when something really latches onto you, it doesn't like leave you. And I feel like what you're experiencing there was that.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So actually, I wanted to go into a bit of what you said when you said that, where, you know, somebody not being likable. Um, as a reader, now we're gonna like take it out a different look at it from a different angle. So like as a reader, or like somebody who like digests like a lot of, you know, stories in many forms, sometimes I get the feeling that I come across characters who authors write, or the writer behind them script, whatever it is they write, and they want them to be likable. They want them not to struggle, or like maybe they struggle, but it's not like in a way that I would connect with, or like in any form. So you saying that you wanted to write a character that was fundamentally like flawed and had to work through their own issues, is how has that like resonated like with readers, or with you as, you know, the author writing it behind, you know, the character?
Well, I'll start with how it's resonated with me is I I'll start with saying I am diagnosed with OCD and with depression, and those have been major battles that I have fought for a long time in my life. And times where I, like the main character, get angry at the world. And, it's things that I have to work through. And these are things that I have often considered flaws, but as I have grown through and worked through them, I have realized, like the main character,
Mhm.
that it's like something that one of the characters told the main character. Her anger doesn't always have to be bad. A certain amount of anger is healthy. Just like my OCD and my depression doesn't have to, I don't have to view it as a flaw. it's not necessarily a flaw. It's just something I have to deal with. It's just something that is a part of me. It's something that makes me me.
And that's like really understandable, because I think it would like resonate with a lot of viewers and listeners, and even it resonates with me as an individual. You know, you go through days where you don't feel like you're your best, you go through anxiety. You know, the human experience is a roller coaster, and it's not always going to be up. And that's why like I love reading and writing, because sometimes the way that I view storytelling is that it's just a small example of the human experience. It's thrown up there. It doesn't matter where it's being told, like what genre, whether it's sci-fi, YA, romance. We all resonate with these characters and these stories on some human level, and that's, I feel like, the human experience in some way captured in like a small way. So like you saying that really resonates with me, and I'm sure it will like resonate with others as well.
Yeah. And it's been nice to see. I have seen, how I've seen some like feedback from like readers, and it's been nice to see that it has resonated with them, that they have felt a connection with Rin, who's the main character, and they have felt moved by her journey. And that's been really nice to hear. It's nice that they have felt those connections through the book, and that the story had the intended effect that I wanted it to.
That's all we ever want as authors. So are there any authors or books that influenced you or your style in writing YA romance? Now, I know you already mentioned one. Is there any others?
Yes, I absolutely adore Rachel Lippincott. She is, as far as YA books go, she is like my idol, because she just writes absolutely, her and her wife write beautiful romances. And but she also writes, romances by herself. But and they just she writes LGBTQ romances, which I love reading LGBTQ romances. I think there's just something so special about them, and I think they're so I just love reading them. As a bi woman, I think they're so special to have in the world, because there wasn't that many when I was little. Like, I remember going to the bookstore, or to the library, and like seeing like the books that were on the shelf, and seeing genres and stuff. And now, as someone who works in a bookstore and someone who writes books, like, the genre is so expanded. And so I think it's amazing that there are people like Rachel Lippincott who purely write LGBTQ stories and write their own stories, because she wrote a book with her wife and it's just their love story. And I think that that's beautiful.
That is beautiful. So many YA authors tap into personal experiences. Did you pull any elements from your own life or relationships to shape the characters within the story? I know you've already touched upon that briefly. Is there any expansion you want to?
Yeah. So I did tap a little bit into some of like my own. There are characters that have similar personality traits to people in my life. And then there's also, so like, for example, the character of Duke, he is supposed to be this perfect golden child that everybody expects so much of and just thinks the world of, and holds him on this pedestal. And basically, he has to be perfect because that's the image that he is in everybody's eyes. And mean to, in a way, manifest that into Duke.
It just happened.
It just kind of happened.
Yeah.
And so now Duke is actually getting his own story.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, Duke is actually getting his own story where the question, so Rin's story was focused on, overcoming that generational violence, generational trauma, and, accepting that violence isn't her birthright. And for Duke, it's going to be asking the question, who am I when I'm not trying to be the perfect person that everybody expects me to be?
That's profound. And also, it actually touched upon like a question I was going to ask you later on. So while you were writing, it seems that Duke might have been the character that surprised you, that you fell in love with, or am I reading that wrong?
So it's actually really interesting. I think the character that I fell in love with the most is probably Spitz. Because Spitz is the third friend in the friend group.
Yeah.
He is this lovable goofball who he's got undiagnosed ADHD. He's just all over the place, and he is this ball of energy that would, if you told him to kill someone, he would do it for you, but he would probably get caught along the way doing it. He's a ride or die, and he's a goofball, but he means so much more than well.
Oh, that's great. Because like, like when you're the author, sometimes like you set off writing and like I don't know how you write, but sometimes like when I start writing, I fall in love with the main character first and then the story kind of manifests around them. But then like sometimes when you start writing, it literally just like switches and like a character you didn't even think was gonna like steal your heart or anything like that just ends up like being your favorite.
And I would say that definitely is the case. Rin will always have a special place in my heart because she's my first character. She's my baby. But Spitz also is like, he's also like my favorite. Like,
yeah. Does it like I know like you're writing more. Does it ever like scare you sometimes, or like as the author, the mastermind behind this, story, that sometimes you might end up favoring a character more than you should, and then why I ask that question is because like sometimes like you might make a decision that maybe surprises your audience, or throws them like a curveball, or even you maybe didn't intend for their arc to end like that, but it just happens because you're like, oh no, like I like them so much, or I'm just gonna throw them a break. How do you go about that?
well, I am worried. I'm worried about writing Duke's character because I feel like there's so much more depth to him that I'm wanting to explore that people might not like, that I feel like exists, that I feel like other people might not have realized existed.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how do I introduce this depth that doesn't feel like it's like such a shocking way, like what you were saying? Like, it's not like a, whoa, where this is coming out of left field. Like, because like, I'm like, how do I keep him being this person, but also the book is about him exploring who he is outside of being this person.
Wow. I guess that's like the crux of the situation, isn't it? Like all about the characters because they're your manifestation, they're your creation, but the audience only knows like half of the story, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I guess I'll be looking forward to seeing like the other half that you bring onto the page.
Yes.
So we're gonna talk about, a bit deeper about The Shadow We Hide. Now, The Shadow We Hide centers on Rin, a complex character dealing with inner darkness and a difficult transition. What drew you to create Rin's character, and how much did she evolve as you wrote?
She evolved. So I think I've talked a little bit already about kind of what drew me to create Rin's character. So I'll kind of just answer how she evolved. And it's interesting. I wanted her to be this like dark and moody character, this very gruff, character.
Yeah.
And she definitely, I feel like, evolved. She evolved into somebody who can let people in. But also, as I was writing, I noticed that she was evolving into somebody who jokes more. And, I was having her make more jokes, and I was having her, and I guess that, like, naturally, like, it should happen, if she's accepting the people around her, but it felt like part of her was changing. But I guess she was changing for the better. And I guess that was supposed to happen because it was a natural flow of things. And she was evolving as a character, and I didn't even realize it.
So Liza plays an important role in breaking down Rin's defenses. How would you describe the dynamic between Rin and Liza, and what do you hope readers take away from it?
Well, Liza was such an important character, and it's actually really interesting because so when I first started writing the book, Liza was just supposed to be a friend. In fact, she wasn't even she wasn't going to be the love interest. Duke was going to be the love interest.
Yeah.
And then
the triangle. Was it?
Yeah. And then as I was writing, the very first scene that I started writing with her and Liza, I was like, they have too much chemistry. I was like, they just have too much chemistry together that nobody's going to believe these two are just friends. And so I was like, I have to pivot. I was like, I'm throwing everything else away. This is the new plan. She is a lesbian who's in love with Liza. Like this is where we're going with this. It's not this plan, it's this plan.
Well, things evolve. So Minnesota and the winter setting play a big part in the story's atmosphere. Was this a deliberate choice? And how do you feel it impacts the tone of the novel?
I think the snowy aspect of the novel and it being midwinter really connects with the fact that she is in this cold and bitter place in her mind. So I think, and I think I actually connected that at one point in the book, like later in the book when she was starting to like kind of come out of that place. And it was like mid-March and like the snow was melting and like, I said that slush was like in between two kinds of beautiful. Because, the winter can be cold and harsh, but it's also beautiful. And then spring is obviously beautiful. Everybody thinks spring is lovely and pretty. But, on the other hand, there's storms in spring. So, but then slush, that melting slush is where you get that that's that space where you are working on yourself. But I think Minnesota, the reason I chose Minnesota specifically, I think they would have always ended up in a cold and snowy place, especially since I had the idea of when it was first blizzarded out. But I think I chose Minnesota specifically because I've just always liked the idea of Minnesota as a place.
Never been to, like, you have
I've never been to Minnesota either. I just think it's like the idea of Minnesota. I'm like, it's a cool place. I just like it. I think it's just the concept of Minnesota.
I'll have to visit. I'll have to put it on like my places to visit because
I know I need to go too at this point because
Is it like mountainy? I know it's cold.
There are mountains. Yeah, you can go skiing.
Okay, I think there's like a YouTuber I listen to like when I'm like bored, who lives in Minnesota, and they're always like talking about it. So I'm like, I feel like I know what it is, but like
exactly.
But the way you described like the cold and how like it just all just like the stars aligned for you to just put the story in that setting, it just like makes sense for the story that you were telling. So we're going to move on to character development. So Rin's struggles and inner conflict are central to her character. How did you approach writing her with such depth, especially as she navigates themes like loneliness, secrets, and healing?
Well, I honestly took a lot. I'm going to kind of be exposing myself here, but I honestly took a lot of experience and a lot of hard looks at like myself when I was writing scenes like that. Yeah. I drew a lot from personal experience and personal feelings, and then I just kind of expanded on those. I expanded on, how I tried to put myself in her shoes if I was in that situation, knowing how I felt in another situation. And it was a lot of writing from experience and a lot of writing from personal feelings. And then just, like I said, expanding upon that.
Yeah. Do you find that, this is like for me, I find like sometimes like when I write, it's kind of like an escape. And I feel like sometimes like kind of like a therapy for me sometimes. I feel like I feel better after I've written. I don't know. I get like a dose of like is it endorphins? I don't know. I feel so much better once I've written like a good chapter or like,
Yeah, for this story was definitely that. There were a lot of times where I would write, especially the very emotional chapters, I would sit down and I would write them, and I'd be sitting and I'd be writing and I'd just be crying. Like I'd just be like just tears were just like streaming down my face, and I'm just like just bawling as I'm like writing, but then I'd feel like so accomplished, and I'd feel so like proud of myself after I'd write it, because I'd be like, if I can like cry while I'm writing this scene, that means it's a good scene.
Yeah, definitely. Because that emotion like will resonate with the reader, and like like when you just like read a book and it's just like so charged and you're like, how did they accomplish this? They were probably crying when they read it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the next question kind of feeds into like everything we've just been kind of talking about. Obviously, Duke is the character that kind of surprised you. But how does his surprising you as the writer help or hinder Rin's growth in the story?
Well, I don't think it hinders Rin's growth at all. I can't think of any way that it hinders Rin's growth. I will say it helps Rin's growth a lot, because his surprising me so I obviously have found that I connect a lot with Rin. And so because I see myself so much in Rin, and then finding that I see so much of my sister and Duke, and writing them as best friends and having that connection in real life.
Yeah.
It's like I was basically writing I was writing the person who guides me as the person who guides her.
Oh, that's really profound. So how did you balance Rin's relationship with Liza? I feel like I'm saying it wrong, and that's like due to just me being British.
That's okay.
You said Liza? I'm saying
Liza, but it's okay.
okay, I'm saying Liza, you're saying Liza. Okay, I have to pronounce the I. Okay, I get it now. And it's an easy name as well.
It's okay. A lot of people pronounce it different ways, and that's because you read it and so you don't know how to pronounce it. So
I feel like I should be able to pronounce that, but it doesn't matter. How did you balance Rin's relationship with Liza and her solitary journey with her inner darkness?
that's actually, I really like that question because sometimes I feel like I didn't balance it very well. Like sometimes I like take a look back at the book and I feel like there's not enough romance, or it wasn't enough of a slow burn. Like those are things that I'm like critiquing myself on, and I'm like, I wish I did this instead. I wish I'd like added more flirtation with them, like before I'd gotten them together, so that it, would have felt more rewarding or something to the readers. But then I have to remind myself that I wanted this book to be a book about healing, with romance as a subplot.
Yeah.
And so while I do classify it as a romance book, it is a book about healing with a romance subplot. It is a romance book that is about healing.
And I don't think like you should be hard on yourself regarding feeling like you didn't do enough while you were writing. Just because I feel like as writers, we're the hardest on ourselves more than, the critics and everything like that. Like if your manuscript is finished, it's done, it's on the shelves, it's being sold. But if you could go back and change something, you would.
Exactly.
It's never finished.
Exactly. It's never finished.
Yeah. So you should just literally just like be proud of like what your book is at the end of everything, because it's a struggle to just get it on the page, not talking about like writer's block or like you get stuck, your notes or your outlines are everywhere, it's hard.
Yes. Yeah, and I was looking through a copy of my book, and I saw a line in it, a sentence, and I was reading it, and I was like, oh, I wish I would have put a comma here. It would have been so much better with a comma. And then I was like, I can't change it.
I know, like literally, like I've talked to writers and authors who've literally been like, if I could change a whole scene, I would. Like the first chapter, I was like, what? It's already up. But like I would too if I had like a chance. Like, but it's like, no, it's finished. It's finished. You can only just like build on it. So you shouldn't feel too hard on yourself like that, because as writers, it's just, I feel like it's just the way of the world.
Yeah, definitely.
So we're gonna talk about the writing process. We've started touching upon that, and tips for authors out there. So
Okay.
can you share a bit about your writing process? Do you outline, or do you prefer to, let the story kind of evolve as you go?
I kind of just go at it buck wild, to be honest. I do like jot down some notes a little bit. Like
Yeah.
I do have like I think for this one, for The Shadows We Hide, I had like um a notes app thing with various different ideas that I could hit throughout the story.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't call it an outline as much as just what's the word I'm looking for? Mouth garbage ideas that were coming out of my brain.
Wow.
So
I mean, I feel like that's understandable, but like, before you found that this, was your kind of like your writing style, was there like, did you go through the whole like, okay, it says like out there, everybody who's ever written, who's, written a book or something, always says the method to writing a novel is you need to outline, it needs to be out here, you need to use this app, you need to do this. Did you try to go through the thing and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't, it's not my style? Because I tried, I couldn't do it. I'm like you. I just write as I go.
I did. I watched YouTube videos. There's actually an indie author whose videos I watched a little bit when I was like trying to get started with like self-publishing. And she has a lot of YouTube videos about like outlining for stories and stuff.
Mhm.
And I watched one of her videos and I was like, because I was like trying to get ideas for like Duke's story. Because I had just finished The Shadows We Hide and I knew I was doing Duke's story, and I was like, let's get this one started. And so I watched one of her videos and I watched the video and I was like, I'm not gonna do any. I was like, I know myself. I can't use a planner
Same.
like one of the other things that I have OCD and I have depression and I have ADHD, and I have never been able to use a planner a day in my life because I use it for maybe a solid few days and then I forget that I have it, or I just stop using it. And I'm like, if I try to use an outline, I'll use it dedicatedly for a few like ideas and then I will just stop using it.
I totally get you. Like, yeah. And was it like kind of, did you find when you were trying to find like your writing process and everything and you were going through the motions and everything, did you find yourself being disheartened a bit? Like, oh no, like I'm not doing it the way that they're saying that I should be doing it. Like, did you ever get to that point where you're like, oh no, is there something that I should be doing different or anything like that?
I definitely was disheartened by writer's block. There was a period of time where I wasn't writing for about 6 months because I had the worst writer's block. I would open up the document and I just would stare at it because nothing was coming out. I would stare at it. I would maybe type one word and then I just delete it. I just go, and because it just nothing would be coming out. And I didn't want to force, garbage onto the page.
Yeah.
So I just, for 6 months, I just didn't write anything on it. And then finally, I just was like, I'm just not going to think about it. I'm just going to let it be. And I started doing other things with my life. I started living my life elsewhere. And I came back to it one day because I had an idea and it just started flowing.
How do you tackle writer's block now?
There are a few different things that I have tried. I've looked up methods for tackling writer's block. One of the things that I have, there are a few different methods. Like one is like try working on another creative project that's supposed to like help, get your creative juices flowing. Another is like reading. Another is just, like what I did, which is, completely turning your mind to something else.
Yeah.
Another is, I believe another was like trying to like play music while you're writing. Just all these sorts of different things to just get the creative juices flowing. And I do often write with music. I find that helps when I have a curated playlist that I feel has the vibes of what I'm trying to write. So I often turn to music when I'm trying to write. And can't really get something going. So I would say music.
You're the first author I've spoken to like throughout this entire series. This is like season 2 of this series, but like who said about the music thing, and like I do it too, and I totally know what you mean, because I don't know, for me, it plays out like a movie in
It
my
does.
head.
It plays out like a movie.
Does it for you? Yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's
It's
fantastic.
like scenes of a movie.
Yes, and the music makes it all like, oh my gosh, like, you know.
And that's why for me, that's why I know a lot of authors now, especially indie authors, will include soundtracks with their books.
Yeah.
But for me, the reason I included a soundtrack with my book was because when I was writing certain scenes, it played out like a movie. And
Yeah.
I was like, I want them to have that same experience. And so that's specifically why I did it. It wasn't like, oh, I just think this song goes. It wasn't like a I think this song kind of goes with this type of thing. It was a like I can see this scene specifically happening to this song in a movie.
Yeah.
So I don't know if other authors are doing it for that reason, or if this is just the vibe type of thing. But that was like what it was for me.
Oh, I resonate with that. So we're gonna like dive further into this, because obviously, you know, with character development and like writing process, so we've established that, you know, using like outlines and stuff like that is not your process. So regarding writing your characters, how do you go about that? Do you have like a specific character sheet where, like, you know, you write down age, you know, where they're from, family background, height, you know, any distinguishable features about the character? Do you do that and then write, or, you know, you just go with the flow still?
Kind of still go with the flow. And to be honest, my character sheet is honestly the Control F function of Google Docs, because then I can Control F and then search. Like if I'm pretty sure that I put a certain height for my character, I Control F and then I'm like 6 foot question mark. And then it's like, yeah, you said she was 6 foot earlier and then I'm like, okay, cool, I did say that.
Oh my gosh, how'd you keep tabs on that? Because as somebody who writes the same process like you write, where it's like music and then like I just go with the flow, sometimes like obviously when like I'm writing a series, I kind of need to like remember key details that I don't remember all the time. So I find myself just like doing random notes, random places of things that I'm always looking for. So like for instance, if I'm looking for, okay, what was the name of the school they go to? I know it's crazy, but sometimes I don't know the name of the school they go to. Like I'll just write it down like there and I'll be like, okay, it's over there. Do you do that?
I like I said, the Control F but function of Google Docs, that is my savior. Like
Yeah.
if you Control F and you're like, I'm pretty sure it's this name, or like that is how like that is how I find, or like if you know like the general section where you first said the name of some, like if I know the general section of where I first said the name of like the high school, like
Yeah.
I'll just go find that section and then look and just like search. Like it might take me a few pages, but then I'll go and I'll search through it and I'll be like, there it is, there's the name.
Oh my gosh, pro tip. I know like you said Google Docs, but if you're using Word, you can do that like search function thing. Is that the one that you're talking about? I don't know.
It's probably the same function.
Yeah.
Yeah, you hit Control F and then you can type in a word and then it highlights every
Yeah,
single word.
basically, yeah. That's what I do as well. And like
Yeah.
I'm just gonna have to find it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, were there any scenes or chapters that were especially challenging to write?
Her there's a scene. Okay. There is a scene that was very challenging to write. It's a scene towards the end of the book. I can't say too much about the scene because it's a spoiler and I don't want to spoil it, but it was extremely hard to write because it's very emotional and it took a lot for the character to get to this place to be able to be able to be in this scene and to have the courage to just exist in this place.
Yeah. Talking about challenging scenes to write, I know, like, for me, everybody around me knows how every story I ever write ends before I've written it. Is that the same for you? And those around you?
Before you've written it. Like,
Yeah.
what do you mean?
Like, I feel like writing is a very solitary endeavor. You can get very caught up in your head. It's just between you and the computer, you and the page. So, when you need to bounce ideas off of anybody, do you like talk to your sister or anybody around you, your friends? Do they like know how your story is going? And you're like, oh, I just wrote this scene. Do you ever like,
Yes. I have my boyfriend Jack. He knows exactly what is happening and
Yeah.
what a lot of what is going to happen with Duke's story. I'm reading it to him as I'm writing it, but he also has been an excellent sounding board for me while I'm like coming up with the ideas and stuff like that. He didn't want to, like, one of the ideas I had, he didn't want to be the sounding board because he was like, no, I want to know what happens. Like, I want to I want to like find out as it like when I read it, like,
Yeah.
but he was like, but if you need the sounding board, I will be the sounding board. So it's been really, really great and really, really helpful. My sister has also been a really good sounding board at times. My mom refuses. She does not want to know. She wants to read it, and she wants to know. She wants to be surprised. She wants to read it as it's happening and know from reading it. She does not want to be told.
Oh, that's great. So I'm gonna like stop here and tell you, obviously, like we talked about like how, when you're writing your book and your story, it sounds it plays out like a movie in your head. I've decided to add a new segment. Then I wanted to like drop it in there, but like I've got time now. So are there any like celebrities or anybody you'd love to play these characters if it was a movie? And we'll come to it at the end. So just start thinking about that.
Yes. Yes. So when I first started envisioning the book, I was always like Haley Steinfeld would play Rin. But more recently, and with such fervor, I think that's how you say that word, I want Alona Mayer to play Rin, and that she is the American rugby Olympian. She's like blown up on TikTok recently. She's on Dancing with the Stars right now. She's she's absolutely hilarious. She's become a huge inspiration to women everywhere because she's this really strong, buff woman who, is secure in her femininity. I can't say that word. I don't know why I can't say that word. Femininity. Yeah. That's so hard. It's like anemone.
A tongue twister, isn't it?
Yeah. But she's very secure in that, and so it's very inspiring to women everywhere. And I really want her to play Rin because I'm like, she is exactly who I picture playing Rin, someone who, stands up for others, someone who not only does she look the part, but she is someone who stands up for others. She's someone who is confident in herself, in her appearance. She's someone who is, she's just this all-encompassing person who can't be stopped.
Yeah.
And I think that is amazing.
That is amazing. Do you have anybody for Duke, or is that not yet?
I don't have anybody for Duke. And I don't have anybody for Liza.
You don't? Oh, well, you probably will eventually.
Yeah, I probably will. I'm hoping. It's interesting because I've always had such a firm image of what Rin looks like in my mind, but Liza has been like this kind of like flowing like she kind of like can be almost anybody. Like with anybody with like long curly like hair with like really super curly hair.
Yeah. So what advice would you give aspiring YA authors, especially those interested in writing character-driven, emotionally complex stories?
Be true to yourself. Be true to your characters. And if it's something that you want to write and it's something that you want to accomplish, you have to be the one to make it happen.
So, regarding, your publishing journey, we touched upon it in the beginning. How have you found indie publishing?
Well, it's been a journey. It certainly hasn't been easy.
Yeah.
I have worked with I'm the one doing the marketing for myself. I'm the one doing I work with Ingram Spark right now to do my distributing, and it's definitely a process.
Yeah.
And it's not always the easiest. I had some setbacks when I was trying to do my ARCs because of shipping times and also because of shipping costs. And those setbacks were devastating. And but I was able to pick myself back up, and I told myself that this is going to happen. This needs to happen. So I kept going.
Yeah.
And so that's really been the biggest issue I think I've had, was not understanding how long it takes for things to get printed, because I mean, that's the other thing. I just had 10 books. I just ordered 10 paperbacks for this event that I'm going to for November 9th, and it took I ordered them the first week of October, and it took the entire I just got them.
Yeah.
It took the entire month.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Are there like 3 things that you wish you knew before that you feel would be helpful to other authors who are, preparing to step into this realm?
Yes. I wish I knew how much everything, like how much it costs to print books. Because even though you do save money when you're working with distributors or with whoever you work with, even though you will save money when you're printing your books, you're going to spend so much money. So, save up your money, start saving your money. I was lucky enough to like be able to borrow some money from my mom, and then pay her back. And then also the second thing, it takes time. It takes time for them to look at your book and make sure that it is, to their standards. Like, to make sure that like everything is like up to code in terms of like the formatting and the way everything looks. It takes time to print the books and then to ship them to you. It takes time to for your editor to edit the books. It takes time to find beta readers. It takes time to find ARC readers. It takes time to get a cover designer and have your cover designer work tirelessly on your cover design and then work on revisions of your cover design and bring your idea to life. And it takes time for all of these things to come together. And then lastly, you need a support system. If you're doing this by yourself, it's going to be tremendously like harder to do than it would be if you had even one person in your corner who is helping you and supporting you and just saying, you know, even if it doesn't go your way, like even if this thing fails, you can pick yourself back up and keep going. It's so important to have those people because you're going to have so many negative voices in your head telling you can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
You need to have the outpourings, the outbound support from people who love and care about you, because they're going to be the ones that you ultimately thank at the end of your book.
And also, like, what was that feeling like when, you know, you did everything and then here comes your first proof in the mail? You know, you're holding your book in your hands, you know, all those hours you spent writing, you know, the times you thought you couldn't do it or you wanted to quit or you had the negative voices, you know, the times that you thought, oh no, like something like just popped out of nowhere and like just kind of derailed your plans for a bit. And then finally, you know, in the post, one day it just comes through and you open it and you've got it here in your hands. What was that feeling like?
So that was really surreal. In fact, so the first box of books that we got, I didn't even open that box myself.
Yeah.
So because that box came when I was in Louisville on vacation visiting my boyfriend.
Yeah.
So I was too excited to wait till I got home. So I had my parents and my sister open it on FaceTime. And I was like, so me and my boyfriend, we watched them open it, and it was really surreal to like look at it, and it was so cool and it was so special. And when I got home and I like saw the box sitting on my bed, it was really, really cool. And it was so it still feels surreal to hold the book in my hand. And like, I mean, I have 2 copies sitting next to me right now. And I like, every time I pick one up, I'm like, this is my book. Like it feels weird to like hold it and be like, this is mine. Like this thick thing here that has weight to it, has hardness and dimension. Like this is mine.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like you're used to seeing it on like your computer or like
Exactly.
out, you know, you don't realize how heavy it is.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's great. So we're going to go on to future projects and closing. So we'd love to hear what you're working on next. Do you have any upcoming projects or themes you're excited to explore?
Well, like I said earlier, I am writing another book. I am writing Duke's story, and when does this interview come out?
2024, 2025.
2025? Okay. I will go ahead and tell you the title then, because I think I will have released the title. I will have teased the title by then. I am writing Duke's story. Who do we become? Actually, why did I just forget the title? Who We Become in the Dark.
Oh wow! Oh my gosh, that's perfect. It even like has a theme from the previous book.
It does. They do have themes. I wanted them to kind of go together.
Yeah.
So yes, Duke's story, Who We Become in the Dark, will be coming out hopefully within the next year and a half. So
That's great. So lastly, where can listeners find more of your work and how can they stay updated on your future books and their favorite author?
So listeners can find me. I'm on Instagram and TikTok and Threads as Kassidy Caroline, the author. And then I'm also on Facebook as Kassidy Caroline.
Oh, that's amazing. So I'll definitely be keeping up with you and your writing. It was fantastic to have you and interview you for this, series. And I just loved talking to you and like knowing a bit more about, your writing process. And, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. It was really great talking to you too.
It was really great.